Admiral Zixcar stood motionless in the observation chamber of the Viridian flagship Eternal Dawn, his crystalline eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. After 3 centuries of military service, he had thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He had been wrong. "Play it again," he commanded, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic resonance of his species. The footage resumed, showing a human military training exercise in what their data classified as the Mojave Desert. The environmental readings made his secondary heart skip a beat. 120 degrees Fahrenheit, minimal water sources, and yet the humans below moved with determined precision through their drills. "Impossible," muttered Science Officer Venra beside him, her tendrils twitching in agitation. They should be experiencing severe cellular degradation in these conditions. Their biological framework shouldn't. And yet they persist. Zixcar interrupted, his outer membrane shifting colors with fascination. He had specifically chosen this observation post because it seemed like the most inhospitable region for military operations. The Viridian Empire had dismissed Earth as a potential threat precisely because much of its surface appeared too extreme for sophisticated military development. The hologram shifted to another scene: nighttime operations. Human soldiers navigated treacherous terrain carrying loads that would crush a Viridian's exoskeleton. Their primitive projectile weapons seemed laughably simple compared to Viridian plasma arrays, yet the accuracy and adaptability they displayed was unsettling. "Show me their recovery protocols," Zixcar ordered. The display changed to footage from a medical facility. A soldier with severe injuries was being treated, and the Admiral's protective scales bristled at the sight. "They cut into their own bodies." "Affirmative," Venera responded, pulling up additional data. "They call it surgery. Their medical technology is primitive compared to our regeneration chambers, but their success rates are remarkable. They can survive the loss of limbs, massive blood loss, and even continue fighting with artificial replacements." Zixcar watched as the injured soldier, mere weeks after this surgery, returned to training. No signs of trauma, no psychological deterioration. If anything, the humans seemed more determined than before. Their adaptability defies evolutionary logic, he mused, manipulating the hologram to show multiple training scenarios simultaneously. "Look here, they train in Arctic conditions, then desert heat, then underwater. No other species we've encountered can function across such extreme variables." The most disturbing footage came from their combat simulations. Humans would deliberately push themselves to the point of physical failure, then continue. They helped their weakest members improve rather than culling them as any sensible species would. They turned their biological weaknesses into advantages through sheer force of will. "Admiral," Venra's voice carried a note of concern, "the High Council expects our preliminary invasion assessment by the next solar cycle. What should I report?" Zixcar remained silent for a long moment, his scales shifting through patterns of deep thought. The Viridian Empire had conquered 17 star systems through superior technology and biological optimization. They were the apex civilization of known space, yet something about these humans made his warrior instincts scream in warning. "Report that additional observation is required," he finally answered. "And mark this species as Category Omega potential." "Omega?" Venra's tendrils coiled in shock. "But that classification is reserved for extinction-level threats to the Empire." "Look at them." Zixcar gestured to the hologram, where humans were engaging in something called competitive sports, deliberately subjecting themselves to physical punishment for recreation. "They don't just endure what should kill them. They seek it out. They thrive on it. And most importantly," he zoomed in on a group of soldiers helping an exhausted comrade complete their training course. "They become stronger through cooperation rather than competition." The Admiral's scales settled into a pattern of grim determination. "Mark my words, Venra. Either we find a way to coexist with these humans, or they will be the end of the Empire. Not because they're stronger or more advanced, but because they simply do not understand the concept of impossible." As he dismissed his officers and remained alone with the holographic displays, Zixcar found himself doing something unprecedented in his centuries of service. He began to question whether the Empire's way was truly superior. The humans below had awakened something dangerous in his thoughts. Curiosity about a different way of existence, one where limitations were seen not as absolute barriers, but as challenges to overcome. He would need to proceed carefully with his investigation. The High Council would not take kindly to these observations, but he knew in his core that this first contact would change everything. The question was whether that change would come through war or understanding. The grand chamber of the Viridian High Council gleamed with bioluminescent light, its crystalline walls reflecting the agitation of the assembled councilors. Admiral Zixcar stood before them, his scales maintaining a rigid pattern of formal respect, despite the hostile atmosphere. Behind him, a holographic display showed various scenes from his Earth observations. "You expect us to believe." High Counselor Mexter's voice resonated with barely contained derision, "that these primitives pose a significant threat to the Empire. They haven't even achieved unified planetary governance." Zixcar activated a new hologram sequence. "Observe this training exercise," he said, keeping his tone neutral. The display showed human soldiers in what they called Marine Corps training, scaling sheer cliffs without technological assistance, then immediately engaging in combat simulations despite obvious exhaustion. "Their lack of unity is precisely what makes them dangerous," Zixcar continued. "While we perfect a single approach, they develop thousands. Each of their nations has unique military doctrines, yet they can seamlessly combine forces when needed. They call it joint operations." Another counselor, Dexable, leaned forward. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They still rely on combustion engines and chemical propulsion." "With respect, Counselor," Zixcar manipulated the display to show human military innovation statistics. "Their technological progress doesn't follow our linear patterns. They developed atomic weapons before achieving spaceflight. They created global communication networks before solving basic resource distribution. They're unpredictable." The chamber erupted in dismissive chatter, but Zixcar pressed on. "More concerning is their response to technological disadvantage. Watch this." The hologram showed historical footage of human warfare. When faced with superior technology, they don't surrender. They adapt. They improvise. They turn their enemies' advantages against them. "You sound like you admire them." Admiral, High Counselor Mexter's voice carried a dangerous edge. Zixcar's scales rippled with careful consideration before responding. "I respect them as I would respect a quantum storm or a gravitational singularity, a force that operates outside our understood laws of nature." He brought up new footage, this time showing human emergency responders. They run into burning buildings to save strangers. They dive into toxic waters to rescue enemies. Their medical personnel treat wounded opponents with the same care as allies. These behaviors violate every principle of evolutionary success, yet they've turned them into strengths. "Enough." Mexter rose from his seat, his scales flashing mourning patterns. "You were tasked with assessing Earth's military capabilities, not philosophizing about their peculiarities. Give us your tactical assessment. Can we conquer them?" The chamber fell silent. Zixcar felt the weight of centuries of military doctrine pressing against what his observations had taught him. His next words could determine the fate of two civilizations. "We could win initial battles," he began carefully, "perhaps even achieve significant victories. But the humans," he paused, bringing up one final piece of footage. A human settlement recovering from a natural disaster, its people working together to rebuild while simultaneously improving their defenses. "The humans don't understand defeat the way we do. For them, it's not an end, but a challenge, a lesson. Each failure makes them stronger, more determined, more unified." He faced the council directly, his scales now showing the formal pattern of a grave warning. "We could win battles, yes, but they would learn from every loss, adapt, improve, and they would never, ever stop. The Empire has never fought a war of attrition against an enemy that grows stronger from adversity. We don't have the philosophical framework to even comprehend their response to invasion. The chamber erupted in outrage. Counselors spoke over each other, their scales flashing patterns of dismissal and anger. But Zixcar noticed something interesting. A few of the younger counselors showed patterns of thoughtful concern. They were asking the right questions. If humans could achieve so much with primitive technology, what would they become with access to advanced Viridian science? As the session devolved into heated debate, Zixcar received an urgent communication from his ship. New observations had revealed something unprecedented. Humans conducting military exercises that deliberately recreated their historical defeats, learning from past failures on a scale no Viridian would consider. The Admiral's scales shifted to a pattern so rare it caught the attention of the entire chamber. The pattern of paradigm shift, used only when one's fundamental understanding of reality had been challenged. He knew then that his next actions would either prevent an interstellar war or precipitate one. The Empire needed to understand humanity before attempting to conquer them. But how could he convince beings of pure logic to respect a species that defied their most basic assumptions about intelligent life? As the session devolved into heated debate, Zixcar received an urgent communication from his ship. New observations had revealed something unprecedented. Humans conducting military exercises that deliberately recreated their historical defeats, learning from past failures on a scale no Viridian would consider. The Admiral's scales shifted to a pattern so rare it caught the attention of the entire chamber. The pattern of paradigm shift, used only when one's fundamental understanding of reality had been challenged. He knew then that his next actions would either prevent an interstellar war or precipitate one. The Empire needed to understand humanity before attempting to conquer them. But how could he convince beings of pure logic to respect a species that defied their most basic assumptions about intelligent life? Admiral Zixcar's personal observation vessel hovered silently in Earth's upper atmosphere, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it invisible to human detection. He had come alone this time, defying standard protocols. After the Council's dismissal of his warnings, he felt compelled to gather more direct evidence. Temporal mark. 300 local time, he recorded, watching a scene unfold below through advanced scanning equipment. Location: human settlement designated Alaska. Environmental conditions: severe winter storm, temperatures lethal to most sentient species. A distress signal had drawn his attention to this region. Now he watched as human rescue workers battled impossible conditions to reach a stranded research team. The storm had intensified beyond their weather service's predictions, trapping the researchers in a remote facility. Remarkable, he muttered, his scales shifting in wonder. They're launching an aerial rescue operation in conditions that would ground our most advanced vessels. The humans had deployed what they called a helicopter, a primitive but surprisingly effective aircraft that seemed to defy the storm through sheer mechanical stubbornness. Its rotors fought against wind speeds that should have torn it apart, while the crew inside coordinated their approach with ground teams. They're not even using environmental suits, he noted with disbelief. The rescue workers wore what appeared to be simple insulated clothing, yet moved with practiced efficiency in temperatures that would freeze a Viridian solid. His sensors detected multiple instances where the humans' core temperatures dropped to dangerous levels, yet they continued working. The rescue operation stretched into its 6th hour. Zixcar had watched 3 different crews rotate in and out, each showing the same impossible determination. They had already saved 4 of the researchers, but 2 remained trapped in an unstable structure. Probability of structural collapse: 89.3%. His ship's AI reported. Recommend immediate withdrawal of rescue personnel. But the humans didn't withdraw. Instead, they adapted. He watched in fascination as they improvised a solution, using their primitive tools in ways their designers had never intended. They reinforced the failing structure with salvaged materials, created a makeshift bridge across a growing crevasse, and pressed forward. They must know the risks. Zixcar mused, his scales displaying patterns of deep confusion. Their sensors, while primitive, can surely detect the structural instability. Why don't they retreat? The answer came moments later, when the structure finally began to collapse. Rather than flee, the rescue workers moved faster, more efficiently. They worked in perfect synchronization, as if the imminent danger had somehow enhanced their capabilities rather than hindering them. "Impossible," he whispered, but the scene before him proved otherwise. Not only did they rescue the remaining researchers, but when one of their own became trapped in the process, they immediately launched another rescue effort. No hesitation, no calculation of acceptable losses, just immediate, unified action. Hours later, as the storm finally began to subside, Zixcar reviewed the footage. Every Viridian military doctrine would have classified this mission as a foolish waste of resources. The risk-to-reward calculations alone would have prevented any rescue attempt. Yet these humans had succeeded, and more importantly, they had clearly expected to succeed despite the odds. "Computer," he commanded, cross-reference this incident with similar events in human history. The results stunned him. Thousands upon thousands of similar scenarios played across his screens. Humans rushing into burning buildings, diving into turbulent waters, venturing into toxic environments, all to save others, often strangers, frequently at great personal risk. This isn't anomalous behavior, he realized, his scales shifting to the rare pattern of fundamental revelation. This is who they are. Every time we've dismissed their actions as irrational or impossible, we've missed the point entirely. A new alert drew his attention back to the rescue site. The humans hadn't left. Instead, they were already conducting what appeared to be a review of their operation, identifying ways to improve their performance for future rescues. They were treating this near-death experience as a learning opportunity. Zixcar felt something shift in his core understanding of the universe. The Empire's strength came from its perfect order, its logical progression, its unified purpose. But here was a species that drew strength from chaos, that evolved through crisis, that unified not through doctrine, but through shared struggle. As he prepared to return to his flagship, he made a decision that would alter the course of two civilizations. The Empire needed to understand humanity, truly understand them, before it was too late. And perhaps he was the only one who could make that happen. The command center of the Eternal Dawn hummed with tension as Admiral Zixcar received the transmission he had been dreading. The High Council had made their decision. The invasion of Earth would proceed within one planetary rotation. "The Council believes your concerns have made you weak," his second-in-command, Commander Relty, reported. Her scales displayed the formal patterns of military protocol, but Zixcar detected undertones of concern. "They've assigned Fleet Admiral Vorkath to oversee the operation." Zixcar's outer membrane rippled with suppressed emotion. Vorkath was known for his ruthless efficiency and unwavering dedication to Empire doctrine. He wouldn't see what Zixcar had seen in humanity. He would only see a primitive species to be conquered. "Show me the invasion plan," he commanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart. The holographic display materialized, showing a comprehensive strategy for Earth's subjugation. It was perfectly logical, meticulously planned, and completely wrong. They had calculated everything except the human factor, that impossible variable that defied their most sophisticated predictive models. They planned to target major military installations first, Relty explained, highlighting key points in the hologram. "Standard shock and awe tactics. The Council believes the humans will surrender once they witness our technological superiority." "They won't," Zixcar said quietly. "Computer, display footage index Gamma 7. The hologram shifted to show historical records of human warfare. "Look here," he gestured to multiple scenes of human forces facing overwhelming odds. When faced with superior force, humans don't surrender. They innovate. They adapt. They unite. He brought up more footage. The rescue operation he had witnessed, military training exercises, disaster responses. Every time we think we understand their limitations, they'd prove us wrong. The Council sees their technological inferiority as weakness, but they're missing the crucial point. Humans don't view limitations the way we do. Relty's scales shifted in confusion. What do you mean, Admiral? Where we see impossibility, they see challenge. Where we calculate acceptable losses, they see lives to be saved at any cost. Where we seek perfection through uniformity, they find strength in diversity. His scales rippled with intensity. If we launch this invasion, we won't be fighting their military. We'll be fighting their very nature. But the Council's orders are based on fundamental misconceptions, Zixcar interrupted. He brought up new data, his private observations of human responses to crisis. Look at their history. Every time they've faced extinction-level threats, they've emerged stronger. They don't just survive adversity. They grow from it. His secondary heart raced as he made the decision that had been building since his first observation of Earth. I cannot allow this invasion to proceed. Relty's scales flashed in alarm. Admiral, that's treason. No, he replied calmly, it's preservation. Not just of humanity, but of the Empire itself. He activated a secure channel to his most trusted officers. We've become so convinced of our superiority that we've forgotten how to learn from others. These humans, these remarkable, impossible humans, they could teach us so much if we only listen. He began inputting commands into the ship's systems. I'm going to Earth. To spy. Relty asked, her scales showing confusion. To warn them. To help them prepare. And perhaps, his scales shifted to a pattern of hope, one rarely seen in Viridian military commanders, perhaps to build a bridge between our species before it's too late. Relty was silent for a long moment, her scales cycling through patterns of conflict. Finally, they settled into a configuration Zixcar had never seen in his centuries of service, the pattern of choosing conscience over duty. You'll need someone to watch your back, she said simply. Over the next hour, Zixcar and his loyal crew members enacted a plan that would either save two civilizations or doom them to a devastating war. They would have to move quickly. Vorkath's fleet would arrive soon, expecting to find Earth defenseless and unprepared. As the eternal dawn broke from its observation orbit, Zixcar recorded one final log entry. To any who review this record, know that my actions are not those of a traitor, but of someone who has glimpsed a truth too important to ignore. The humans have shown us that the impossible is merely the undiscovered possible. Perhaps it's time we learn to see the universe through their eyes. The Joint Chiefs of Staff sat in stunned silence as they processed the information Admiral Zixcar had just shared. The Pentagon's secure briefing room, hastily converted to accommodate their alien visitor, felt impossibly small for the weight of the moment. You're telling us, General Sarah Chen finally spoke, that an alien invasion fleet is less than 48 hours from Earth, and you, their own admiral, came here to warn us. Zixcar's scales shifted in what his cultural liaison had identified as an affirmative pattern. I came because I've seen what humanity is capable of, and I believe there's a better path than war. The holographic display between them showed the approaching Viridian fleet, hundreds of ships that could devastate Earth's defenses within hours. Yet the human military leaders weren't showing the fear or panic Viridian tactical doctrine would have predicted. Instead, they were already adapting, planning, preparing. What made you choose this path? Admiral James Rodriguez asked, studying the alien with intense curiosity. Why risk everything to warn us? Zixcar activated a different hologram, footage from his observations of Earth. Because I watched your species defy everything my civilization believes about the nature of intelligence and survival. The images flowed. Human rescue workers charging into danger, soldiers risking their lives for comrades, communities rebuilding from disasters stronger than before. The Empire believes in perfection through uniformity, progress through careful calculation. But you, his scales rippled with emotion. You find strength in diversity, progress through challenge, unity through adversity. You don't accept limitations. You overcome them. General Chen leaned forward. And you think we can overcome this? She gestured to the fleet display. I think you'll try, regardless of the odds. And that's precisely why I'm here. Zix-Car's scales shifted to a formal diplomatic pattern. I'm proposing something unprecedented. A collaboration between our species, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals with different strengths to share. The room erupted in discussion, but a sharp gesture from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs restored order. You mentioned a plan. Zix-Car nodded, bringing up new tactical displays. The Empire's greatest weakness is its rigid adherence to doctrine. They cannot comprehend, let alone counter, your capacity for adaptation and innovation. If we combine your unpredictable creativity with my knowledge of Viridian tactics, over the next several hours, an extraordinary partnership took shape. Human military strategists proposed solutions that would have been dismissed as insane by Viridian commanders. Yet Zix-Car saw their brilliant potential. They weren't just planning to survive. They were planning to force the Empire to reconsider its entire approach to interstellar relations. As the plan solidified, Zix-Car received an unexpected transmission from the Eternal Dawn. More ships had broken away from Vorkath's fleet, commanded by younger officers who had seen his evidence about humanity. They weren't just facing a revolution in military doctrine. They were witnessing the birth of a new philosophy within the Empire itself. Your species, Zix-Car addressed the assembled leaders, has a saying about necessity being the mother of invention. Perhaps this crisis will birth something greater than either of our civilizations could achieve alone. The next 48 hours would reshape the galaxy. As Vorkath's fleet approached Earth, they would find not a primitive world ripe for conquest, but a united force of humans and Viridian rebels ready to demonstrate that the impossible was merely the universe's way of testing determination. In his private quarters that evening, Zix-Car recorded one final personal log. I came to Earth expecting to witness the end of one chapter in galactic history. Instead, I find myself helping to write the beginning of a new one. The humans have a concept they call hope, and a logical yet powerful belief that better outcomes are possible despite all evidence to the contrary. For the first time in my long life, I understand this concept. And more importantly, I share it. As Earth's sun set on what might be its last day of peace, preparations continued around the clock. Humans and Viridians worked side by side, each learning from the other, each growing stronger through their differences rather than despite them. They were about to show the Empire that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology, or military might, or even logic. It was the simple, unstoppable power of diverse minds, united by a common purpose. The impossible revolution was about to begin.